If you come over to the shop barn, you can see that the proven winners, wee white hydrangeas, are starting to look great. There's still a lot of blooms that have not opened, but there's a lot that have, and as you can see how large these are, they're amazing. You would think that would flop, being such a large bloom, but they don't. They don't. I've got a video from, I think, last year when they were bloomed out pretty heavy, and just kind of demonstrating how strong the stems were. This plant here is really just started. You can see most of them have not really not bloomed out, but then some have. I have a planting of I have 5 planting here. This one on the end is not doing very good. I'm not sure what's wrong with him. Last year he did much better. I just don't know. I'm going to have to evaluate this little guy here. You know, every time I see this, I think fungal. So I don't know. Like I said, it's not a new planting. So we'll have to evaluate. But the rest of them are doing really good. And I did notice that my blue hosta is getting a little bit sunburnt. I don't know if you can see how he's changing from kind of a blue color to this color. Just gets more sun here. This is a morning sun side. It's the east side of this overhang. And you know, these dark hostas, they don't like just too much sun. But anyway, I just wanted to show you this beautiful hydrangea up against this Japanese maple. The contrast is really, really pretty. Headed to the front yard, I just wanted to show you basically what the daylilies look like now. So we're approaching towards the end of May, and you can see that the Stella d'Oro daylilies, I showed them in my first garden video tour of the early part of May, and they had just started. I think I had 1 or 2 blooms, but I have created sort of a hedge here, and you can now see how loaded that they are with the blooms. And I discussed last time why I like the Stellas so much. They're just a tough plant. You can't hardly kill them. I mean, I've neglected them and they still perform amazing. The pink double knockouts are pretty much on their way out. All of their blooms are pretty aged. So probably what I'll do soon is just cut them back and let them reflush out so that they will give me another bloom cycle and be glorious. But I hate to cut them back while my daylilies are so pretty, because I think the pink and the yellow look really nice together. So anyway, that's basically what's going on in the front yard. In the last video, I didn't really show anything in my backyard. There's really not a whole lot going on. But one thing I want to show you is this glorious magnolia tree. So we were zone 6B as long as I can remember, and they've just moved us to zone 7A. So if you're in zone 6B and you think, well, I can't grow a magnolia because, you know, it's a southern thing, this is the north, and we get powerful north winds. And as you can see, there's no buildings, no trees to block the north wind. And so this tree in the wintertime gets hammered with very cold north winds. And keep in mind, in December of 2022, we had an Arctic blast that came through, and we had negative 31 wind chill, and negative 4 degrees was just the ambient, regular temperature. And so this magnolia has done very well. And I wanted you to see, I wish you guys could smell this bloom. This one has not opened yet, but this is the bloom of the magnolia. And it smells like perfume. My gosh, I don't even know. It's hard to describe it. It's not a fruity smell. It's a perfume smell. It's a strong perfume smell. And it is when this opens, I mean, it will be huge, right? Those petals are huge. And this is just the first one that I see that's bloomed. But my mother-in-law and father-in-law, here's another one. They gave me a little, it was a seedling. Here's another one. So when you're standing downwind from this thing, I don't know what variety this is. It's certainly not a new variety. But they gave me this little seedling, and I put these blocks here. I had actually a bunch of blocks, because my thinking was, when the north winds blow, I built a little temporary wall. I left 2 of them here, but there was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 8. So it was 3 rungs high. And at that time, it was tall enough to protect the tree. But this tree has sent forth, all of this is new. All of this is new. So this is another little magnolia. And magnolias are evergreens. And they keep these shiny, big leaves all year. And very fast growers. And it survived that super cold temperature. So, I know a lot of people don't think magnolia. The only complaint that people really have is that they drop these leaves. And yes, they do. They will drop these leaves. Not all year, but they will drop them. And all I do is I just mow around them and blow the leaves back underneath the tree canopy. I don't mind, because to me, having these blooms is worth the leaf drop. I mean, look at the shiny leaves on this thing. It's one of my favorite trees, because it's evergreen, because it's bold and big, and you can get some smaller varieties too. But another little thing I want to show you real quick in this backyard is something I just recently planted. So I've got 1, 2, 3 little trees that I just planted. And these are the coral bark Japanese maple. And I got them from Mr. Maple, which you can get very reasonably priced trees from Mr. Maple. But notice the coral color stems that will be coral in the winter when there's no leaves on it. So it'll provide beautiful color in the wintertime. But really what's cool too is look at the new leaves. When the new leaves emerge, they have this red edging. And keep in mind, this is a brand new planting. Just planted this recently, like just a few weeks ago. And so it's just kind of struggling to just survive right now, because it was in a lot of heat recently. But I've got 2 of the coral bark, and my thoughts is that as they grow and they get wider and that coral bark shines in the winter, that it will be a nice contrast to this blue color of this evergreen. And this one, I had to stake it because it was leaning heavily in one direction. But this one is a Hortsman blue atlas cedar, or the Cedrus atlantica. But it's the Hortsman, which my understanding is that it doesn't get quite as large. I don't expect it to look good for a couple of years, but then I think after its third year, it'll really start growing, and the blue hue with the red bark. My thoughts are is it'll be a really pretty contrast, and of course this tree will stay evergreen. And on the back of the leaves of this magnolia, it is a coppery, kind of a copper color, which is also kind of a unique color. I don't know if you can really see it on video very well. But, magnolias can't handle super cold climates, but we've had some pretty cold weather, and it has survived and done very well. I haven't even had any limbs of that tree to die back from the cold. So I encourage, if you are in zone 6 even, if you could plant it maybe on the south side of somewhere where it may have a little bit of protection from the north winds, it might be worth it. Just get you a little tree, and it'll take time, but it will be worth it in the end. And you know what? It's amazing how fast time flies. I mean, I know that the last 10 years has flown by, so you will eventually get there, and you'll be so happy that you planted things 10 years ago that you are now enjoying. So, and you sure don't want to be planting stuff when you're, arthritic and old and feeble. I don't, for sure. So now's the time to do it. There's no time like the present. I know one thing that's on my to-do list is to do some serious edging on all of my borders. The reason I haven't is because I keep thinking I'm going to expand some of these borders and to give room for more plants, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time edging something if I'm going to have to re-edge it. So that's one reason I haven't done it. I'll give you for instance, this is lavender. I told you earlier, I think, that I had some phenomenal lavender. This is phenomenal lavender right here. And it is getting ready to put on a show. Just now starting. It's loves full sun. It doesn't have to be watered. It smells good. But I'm thinking that around the perimeter of this, I want to put something also that goes a little bit lower. But I don't know what yet. Something that contrasts nicely with that lavender, the blooms. The spring, in between each plant, there's a planting of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe just 5. I had daffodils in between them, and they were beautiful. So I had pruned these way back, and then the daffodils were in bloom while this was still sort of in a state of, it wasn't really dormant because they stayed green. The phenomenal is an evergreen. It stayed a beautiful silvery blue. You can't tell it because the stalks here look green, but if you can see down in there, it was actually a kind of a silvery color prior to it sending out all this new growth. So it was sort of a silvery color, and then these daffodils were a peach color. So it looked really beautiful together. But now the lavender has grown up, hiding most of the foliage of the daffodils, which was my intent. But I would like to plant something else on the outer part, so I haven't edged any of this yet because I just haven't decided how far out I need to edge it, or if I'm going to edge it. So I need something that loves the hot sun and doesn't need a lot of water. Something that will pair nicely with this lavender. So, yarrow might be a good option, but I need something that grows a little bit shorter. So anyway, I'm still thinking about that one, but I think it's going to be beautiful. Something I noticed that I got a little excited about, I thought it was kind of early, but my blue chiffon rose of Sharon that I have here that I'm trying to tree form has actually put out some blooms. And you can see how blue that is. This is the bed that I showed in the last video, but a couple things I wanted to take note of. Finally, the pink profusion salvia has pretty much decided to stop blooming with this cycle. Since most of the blooms are gone at this point, I think I will just shear it completely, not completely down to the ground, but certainly take it down, probably at least 6 inches, maybe longer. This is a Holy Grail hibiscus, which probably will end up moving. It's got beautiful, beautiful flowers. It's really not a lot of difference between the Holy Grail hardy hibiscus and the Midnight Marvel that I showed in my last video. The blooms are basically the same color. The only thing that might be different is this plant seems to grow more upright versus sprawling outwardly like the Midnight Marvel. But that could be completely because of the location in which I have them. So I don't know for sure. But if you like the look of the Midnight Marvel and you can't find one, get a Holy Grail, because it looks basically the same. If I were to hold up the leaves, I think the leaf coloring, that burgundy leaf coloring, is basically the same, and the blooms are the same color. So anyway, and then this Jump for Joy rose is still just blooming its little head off. I think it looks prettier today than it did in the last video. If you like that peach drift rose, but you want something taller, this Jump for Joy is a beautiful bloomer. It is having a little bit of issue right now with some fungal problems with its leaves. But I can understand why. We have been hit with tons and tons and tons of heavy rains. The ground stayed soggy. The foliage stayed soggy for multiple days in a row. And then it turned off really muggy and humid. And now we're getting ready to get some more rain. And I haven't treated it with any sprays or fungicides. So I'm not surprised that it has a little bit of fungal problems. But I want you to notice that the Oh So Easy rose in the same location has 0 leaf problems. However, I'm not a huge fan of the blooms. It works really hard, don't get me wrong. And the blooms are darling, they're cute. The foliage is definitely superior, but I'm just partial more to this. There's a dead one, an old one here. But if I sprayed it, or if I had used a systemic fungicide, I'm sure the leaves would have looked great, but I don't know. Not only is it expensive, but I don't know. I try not to use too many chemicals if I can avoid it. This is another younger Oh So Easy red rose. My white Gara that I said I was going to prune back, I did not, because it started blooming. And I think Gara looks really pretty growing up around roses and things like that, because it's just that wispy, fairy, butterfly type bloom that I think goes really well with other textures. I think since the last time I did a video, which was several weeks ago, I think this has already grown another foot. That's the Smoke Bush by Proven Winners. It's called Winecraft Black, I think. Smoke Bush. Yeah, Winecraft Black. And it's going strong. I still have no blooms on my daisy. I don't even see where it looks like it's wanting to bloom. I think this is just it's an off-label daisy. A friend gave me just a small little clump, and it's probably 10 times larger than it was. But it's very healthy. I'm waiting to see if it puts forth any kind of really pretty blooms. My White Wands Veronica that I mentioned in the last video that said was a miracle, it's still got some white on it. You can see the bottom part of the wand is starting to age, but considering I thought this was a dead plant, I'm pretty proud that it's doing something, right? Since the last video, I planted an Atlas rose here. It had blooms on it. I took them all off because I wanted it to focus on root development and not worry about flowers. However, all it's done is put out more and more buds. But the Atlas rose is a really beautiful color. You can see I lean towards these peach color roses. But I expect that rose will be twice that size and glorious next year. I literally just put it in the ground a week ago. My that blue baptisia has completely stopped blooming, but it was a beautiful display when it was in bloom. I planted this little clematis here. I planted 2 clematis here. And the rabbits, I don't think you can see it. It's too well camouflaged, but right down there at the base, you can't tell. But right there at the base, I'd like for you to see what they did, but it's really hard to see it. The rabbits just bit it off, and I came out here, and the clematis vine, all the leaves were just wilted, and it was up in here, and it had purple blooms on it, or a purple bloom, and everything was wilted. I thought, oh, it needs water, so I rushed to give it water. And then I came out a little bit later and it was still just as wilted, if not worse. And then I started examining it closely and realized it wasn't even attached anymore, just like this one is. It's still attached. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, this little clematis, which is a light blue clematis, it is really going strong, putting out new growth. So we'll see if this other one comes out at the ground, and if it does, I'll be excited. The cone flowers are starting to bud up here. This one is the one in a melon. Last year it had really pretty blooms on it, and I have some other cone flowers that are also starting to bloom. This one here is absolutely covered in buds, and it's got one bloom. And this one is called Double Scoop Cranberry Coneflower. And then I've got this one over here. This also just covered in buds. It's another one. It matches the Oh So Easy Rose pretty good. And then I've got another one here, a young, very young plant. These are phlox. Mosquitoes are so bad. This is a proven winter's phlox, and I will show you when it blooms what it looks like, and we'll talk about that. That's a pink variety, and this one is a white variety. So when they start blooming, when they start blooming, I will show you what they look like. One interesting thing that I mentioned in the last video was this baby's breath that I had started from seed, and I didn't see any action from it at all. Well, you can see there is starting to be some action, and they're super tiny. I think if I had pruned this back when it started coming up, it would have been a thicker plant, more dense, and I think the blooms would have been more concentrated. But you can see, and I think they would be really cute if they would grow up through my roses, or come up as like a little filler in the in another planting. So these guys might get moved. I mean, what are they doing here? They're really not serving much of a purpose. I mean, they're a beautiful, wispy, ethereal, fluffy little flower, but they're not accenting anything. And so I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was maybe originally thinking they would come up through the barberry, a red, but they really need something that grows taller, that they can weave their way through. To me, the roses would be perfect. And I think any shade of rose, any color of rose, it would be perfect. Whether it's the apricot color or the reds, maybe not white. They probably would get lost in something white. But nonetheless, I'm really wanting to do more baby's breath. I'm trying to figure out what seed I can get that will provide the little double blooms on the baby's breath. These are not double blooms that I planted. These, if you look at them very closely, which I don't know if my camera can zoom in enough to show you. But these are not double blooms. You can see that they literally just have like 5 petals. But they, there is a more of a florist variety of baby's breath that you see, that florists use with roses. That's a double. And I've looked on Etsy, but sometimes you have to be careful because the photos that they use for their advertisement is not necessarily the seeds that you get. So, but the cool thing about Etsy that's different than a lot of other places that you can buy plants, you can message the seller. You can message the seller and ask them, is this a double flowering baby's breath? And, they can let you know before you even purchase it. So I really love the Etsy, it's usually smaller stores, individuals that are selling on their Etsy stores. And I've been very pleased with the products I've gotten in the past, provided that, I did my research and I looked to see, I read the reviews, and I looked at the seller's ratings, and I won't buy unless they have a really good rating. My little petite knockout rose is cute. Its foliage looks nice and clean, but it's just a super tiny little compact rose that I think looks really pretty with this yellow evergreen. Again, I've already highlighted these lilies. But I'm just drawn to them. They're just fun to look at. My eyes are just drawn to just stare at them. But they're pretty much in their full bloom right now. I think every year they're going to get better and better. They do not grow tall. So many lilies do, but these don't. And not a huge orange fan, but I think they look really good with the yellow barberry and the blue star juniper. This is that other planting of the pink profusion salvia, and notice how it just does not split. It does not flop. It's still got blooms on it, but they're not there's no new ones going to form. So I'm really thinking about just shearing all the salvia back and letting them reflush. But it's still a neat little compact plant. And the stems still have a burgundy shade to them. So when you look at it, especially up against that yellow barberry, you kind of feel like you're still looking at bloom spikes because of the burgundy tint. So, it's still an attractive plant even after it's finished blooming. And it's just now stopping, and it started one of the earliest blooming perennials that I had anywhere on my property. So, and again, you're going to get a second flush of blooms if you prune it back, and that'll stimulate more bloom production. This one here was my May night. It finally just said, forget it. I'm too tired to stand up, so it flopped, and I can go back and I can shear it off as well. I've got a couple little bitty plants that aren't doing a whole lot, but they're cute if you can get down and see them. This is a beard tongue. If I can get it to focus. It's a beard tongue that I planted here last year. It was just a really super tiny plant. I didn't even know if it was going to come back up. It looked like it was just not even going to do anything. And it finally decided to come up, and now it's got the flowers on it. This is a yellow, I want to say it's an agastaki. Let's see what it says. No, it's a verbascum. It's not the healthiest looking thing. I don't really think it likes this location very much. Here is another. I love these trumpet-shaped flowers. This is actually one plant, but somehow this was the original planting, and it seemed to have dropped a limb that got covered with dirt, and then it sent up a second plant here. I'm not sure if it's even still attached to the mother plant. I'm sure it's still attached, but I think it would probably be able to live on its own. But this is called Cha-Cha Hot Pink. It's a penstemon. And all these little trash cans, these are little wire mesh trash cans. I have them inverted, and I have them over plants that either I am trying to protect from me so that I don't step on them, or I am protecting them from the rabbits because the rabbits will chew. Now this is a variegated iris, so I'm not really protecting it from the rabbits. The rabbits don't seem to bother the irises, but I have stepped on that twice. I don't know, it just seems camouflage to me, and I don't have a very good pathway through here. I kind of figure I'll eventually make a pathway once I get the plants where I want them. This bed was originally started as more of a trial bed for myself, because I wanted to see what plants did well, what plants didn't, what do they look like, and I have moved multiple plants into this area and out of this area already. I planted these little bobo hydrangeas, and they're just getting swallowed up by the other plants. So I've already moved several of those. And, I've got all these irises here that were beautiful blue this spring, but they're so congested now that I need to move them. So this bed is more or less just something I'm putting plants in because I like the plant and I want to see how it does. But it's not necessarily going to be their permanent home. So anyway, if you see these white trash cans and these bricks, I put the bricks down so that the wind does not blow them away. This is a brand new planting. This is a Beyond Midnight Bluebeard. And I planted one of these and it died. So I'm really hoping that this one lives. And because I really love blue flowers, or blue in this case, if they're blueberries, whatever, blueberries, blue flowers, blue accent. And, you know, it's really hard to find flowers that are truly blue, not purple, but truly blue. There's a few. And some are still probably on the side of a purpley blue, but I'm trying to get more blue accent in here. The Walker's Low, I'll show you that here in a second. It's been blooming its head off for weeks upon weeks, and it's a beautiful blue. It's still got more of a purpley lavender tint to it, but it's still, I think, more on the blue side. I had planted this Thunderhead sedum. I love sedum. You know, their foliage is amazing looking. It will bloom, but it's kind of being overshadowed by this iris that a friend gave me. And so I'm going to be moving that sedum. The sedum is right here. Someplace so it can get plenty of room, have plenty of room to grow and get plenty of sun. So anyway, let me make my way back through here. These blue star junipers are awesome evergreens, but just a heads up, pay a little extra to get a big plant, because I planted this one and this one, I don't know, 3 years ago, and they may have grown, I don't know, they certainly haven't doubled in size. They may have gone, as far as their overall diameter, maybe a couple of inches. You know, some plants, it pays to just go ahead and get the little baby plant, because it's going to explode in growth. Hence, the salvias. There's no need to pay for a big container of salvia, because in one season, it's going to double. The double play doozy spirea, that was just a little baby plant, but it just grew like crazy. So you don't have to expense a big plant. But when you start getting into these evergreens and things like that, you know, I think it pays to go ahead, bite the bullet, pay a little extra, and get a larger plant. I mean, if you want to live to see it come to maturity, that is. My balloon flowers that I started from seed that I mentioned in the last video still haven't flowered, but looky what's happening. Looky what's happening here. They're going to be really soon. And they are going to look so awesome if this rose is still blooming when they decide to bloom. Because you're going to have the blue and that red with the white interior on those petals. I think it'll be pretty. Now this rose is kind of past its peak. And this has not been the healthiest of roses, but I believe that's been my fault. I really haven't taken good care of it. But you can see it does not have very much fungal issues, because if you'll notice the leaves are still, you know, pretty healthy. Now you'll find some, and I have put no chemicals on this one either. So I didn't mention this last time, but back here is a perennial also, called Crazy Blue, Russian Sage. I had to think about that one for a second. Crazy Blue Russian Sage, and it will also be putting out blue blooms. Let me make sure I'm telling you guys right. There's a tag. Crazy Blue, Russian Sage. Oh, and some lovely dandelions, providing some yellow, some yellow accent. Isn't that wonderful? But here soon, as you can see, this plant will also be putting forth some beautiful blue flowers. So, you know, I'm going to have some blue accent pretty soon. But, you know, I got to thinking, that baby's breath, wouldn't that be pretty mixed in with these blue balloon flowers? Because they'll kind of grow up in there and kind of peek out, and those really soft little baby white flowers mixed in with the really pretty star-shaped balloon flowers. Anyway, you know, I've got these baby breaths everywhere, like those little plants there, but I just started them from seed, and every year they've gotten a little bit bigger. I don't think that they're at their, they're certainly not at their mature stage yet. This is the Walker's Low Catmint, still going strong. It's kind of being bullied a little bit by some by a lily in here. This lily has been shoveled up and messed with, and it still is growing strong. You can kind of see what color. We had to dig a trench through here for an electrical line. You can kind of still see the brown going to his elevator system there, and so a lot of my plants were jostled around, and some of them I moved, and some of them I just thought, oh well, good luck. So this lily was one of those that I just didn't even bother to try to protect, and I figured it probably had gotten swallowed up in the dirt, but it's these lilies are pretty hardy. Oops. But you can see how cute that blue Walker's Low Catmint kind of looks with that. And if I'd spend some time cultivating this and, maybe putting some more around this side of the Walker's Low, that would be and I probably will. That would be a really pretty, now that I know that the lily is actually gonna make it in there. But we just did this last, maybe it was in October of last year. So I'm just now kind of recently just found out that lily was gonna survive. I just planted this little guy. It's a rose that I started from a cutting of another rose. So that is so fun. If you guys have not gotten into the propagation with cuttings, it is a blast. And you don't necessarily have to have any greenhouse or anything. It's probably helpful to have some things around like that you can use for humidity domes. And maybe a heat mat, but I don't know that you even have to, because I started several rose cuttings in my kitchen with some solo cups and some clear plastic cups. As a matter of fact, I think that's where this rose came from. This rose here, I think, came from one of the cuttings that I had done. Doesn't look very good. I think it's a climber, and I really haven't given it the proper attention that it needs. But just to quickly show a couple of other things, and then I don't want to take up everybody's time. I planted some yarrow. This is the apple blossom yarrow. I planted a grouping of 4. Actually, it's right. Yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the Carolee Petite Gara. The things with the with the trash cans on them are all my little seedlings that I'm trying to protect from the rabbits. This is a hydrangea, and it's going to be the blush. This is the Incredible by Proven Winners, but it's the Incredible blush. So probably here in another week or so, these will be a beautiful, it'll look a lot like that wee white that I showed you at the beginning of the video, but it will be a pinkish color, mauve color. But I planted 2 plants here. This one would have been a lot better, but when I got down to plant that lamium, I broke off like 4 stalks of this Incredible. I just, being a klutz, I guess. This is a geranium. Let's see if I still have a tag. I do, but seeing it is a whole different situation. I want to think it's a Proven Winners, but I could be wrong. It is the it's the Boom Chocolata geranium. I don't like it here. For some reason I thought it was short growing and that it would kind of just nestle underneath those hydrangeas and put out, little purple flowers, but it's a little bit too tall. So that's another one. However, I think when I dig it up, it looks like, if you look down in here, I might be able to divide it. It looks like there might be multiple, I don't know, I don't want to kill it doing it, but it looks like I might be able to break off little pieces and maybe root them in. Here is an interesting little plant that, again, one of those that I thought, it must be dead. Because here we are towards the end of May, and it's just now really starting to kind of break forth. And I was really hopeful for this plant because I think it is a darling plant. This is the Fall in Love Sweetly anemone. And so I'm really hoping that, it's just a late starter and that it's going to really push some new growth this year. And, the fact that it survived, I guess, is a blessing. Some of these things I planted really late last season, and it got so hot and they got so stressed that, they just struggled. And so survival was a win. You can see that most of my stuff I plant is super tiny. So example here is this lamium right there. It was literally, I think, like a 2.5-inch pot. I got it off of Etsy, but it was cheap. There's one over here that I planted. That's the one I planted when I broke my hydrangea here. I just think that ground covers are just the way to go if you're trying to keep away weeds and you're trying to keep the earth cool and maybe reduce the amount of mulch you have to put down every year. This is that side bed, but just to show you what's changed this time is you can really see that my annuals, my supertunias that I planted, have really bulked up and are really putting out a good show here. So again, this is the bubblegum by Proven Winners. This is the snowdrift, bubblegum, snowdrift, bubblegum. I just kind of alternated it because I wanted a little bit of color, all season here. And the interesting thing about this particular location is this is on the north side of this greenhouse. And so in the winter, the sun is way towards the south. And so all of this is super shady. But then as the summer moves, comes around, slowly the shadow moves back. So I knew that eventually this edge would be full sun, like literally full sun, morning to way in the evening. And so I left this little area. I thought, you know what, that would be good to just leave it and every year plant annuals that need full sun. That way you can plant your full shade stuff in the back or part shade stuff, and then you can put your annuals in the front. And it's kind of a mixed border deal there. So I've been really happy with this. I'm not sure if it's just that nice edge of those rock on the edging there that provides a little bit of, I don't know, it's just interest, I guess. It's the whole package, I think. The last video I was kind of a little bit critical of the spot on pulmonaria, and I wanted to apologize because it's really going strong now, putting out some bold, strong looking leaves. So maybe I was too harsh on it and too quick to judge. And it's not been there very long. So, and everything again that I buy is small. So you can see, I mean, it's probably 1.5 feet wide now. And it sure didn't start off like that last year. So anyway, I think it just needed some time. The Hakanakloa grass is looking bright and cheerful. The little tiny quickfire here, it will hopefully bloom, but if it doesn't, it's okay. They were super tiny plants, and when I planted them last year, here's another one right there. It's a little tiny quickfire. You know, because if you think about it, there's really nothing in this bed that's going to put forth blooms late in the season, so I wanted something maybe of interest. This poor, this poor rhododendron here, it just looks like it's really suffering. I almost wonder if it has root rot. I've pulled all of the mulch kind of away from the base, the crown of the plant, thinking maybe I could, I don't know, protect it. But I think once the plant starts looking that bad, it's maybe too late. But I've thought that before, and plants are amazing how they can pull out of situations. So here's some other lamium back here that's got some blooms on it. It's that purple. Now they do come with pink blooms, which really a pink bloom one would be nice. But purple's fine. This is, I think, similar to that other one that I showed you. This is that Trevi fountain. I don't expect it to do anything for, gosh, at least this year, because I just planted it a few weeks ago. But it's that Trevi fountain that has the cutest blue blooms. And they stay blue. At least the one in the front yard that I have by the house, it has kept its blooms up until just not too long ago. When the heat came, it said forget it. And it has completely stopped blooming now. And it's, you know, my little clematis here is growing, and I am not training it very well. I cut this one back. And this clematis, oh my gosh, is the most darling clematis. It's called Little Mermaid. It was just a tiny little plant, but I planted it last year, so it didn't do much. But then this spring, it put out the most darling baby doll pink blooms. And when they would age, they would change color. So like they would start off one color and then age to a different. So you had multi shades of pink, which is kind of the whole point I'm trying to, you know, to make in this garden, is I want shades of pink, pastels. It's hard to do that in the shade, so I'm doing the best I can. But just a, you know, this is a yarrow that I just planted that is called Tutti Frutti. Pink grapefruit yarrow. Again, in that whole pink, shade of pink family. It'll probably have some blooms on it pretty soon. I see some buds. Just a few things that, you know, and getting close to the end of May that I wanted to show. This is a pink spirea, and I don't know the name of it because my father-in-law gave those to me. He wanted to redo a bed, and he gave me like 20 plants, and I have absolutely loved them. Loved them, loved them. It's they're just a beautiful shade of pink. They're a beautiful, the habit of the plant is beautiful. You know, I never knew much about spirea, but I have really grown to love spirea. And there's several plants here. There's like, I think 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side of this ugly propane tank. And then there's 2 here on this side. 1 and 2 on this side. So, and this is mint. Buyer beware with mint. It's beautiful, and you can brush up against it, and it smells divine. And notice the difference. I want to show you how different mint can look. So this is one variety. It's a chocolate. Actually, it's a peppermint type. I don't know if it's a chocolate. Sorry, I had to kill a mosquito. This is like a peppermint, and this one over here is a spearmint. They're not both peppermint, but look at the difference in the way the leaves look. Now this one is my favorite. It's an apple spearmint, and it smells better to me than the peppermint. This is that nightlight chamaecyparis. I've had it here. I planted it last year, and I don't know if this guy's going to survive. I mentioned it last time. This is the sugar tip Rose of Sharon, and I transplanted out here, and then it got really hot, and it's just kind of shriveled up. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I broke off a little piece of this Hydrangea grass. This is the all gold Hydrangea grass, and a little piece was coming out here, and it was kind of encroaching upon my hosta there. So I just kind of ripped it out of the ground, and it still had roots on it. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm gonna find a spot. So I just randomly thought, well, I'll plant it here, and I did that, and it's still alive. And I did that a while back. It got tons of rain on it after I did that, so that might have helped. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to show you guys, and I'm sorry it was so long. I tend to get long-winded. But hopefully things will continue to be pretty, and this area by my greenhouse, I'm trying to think ahead and choose colors and sizes and textures that eventually will all blend nicely together and will be very pleasing to the eye. There is one thing I really want to show you, is this rose that I ordered online from David Austin, and it's the Queen of Sweden, and I am overjoyed with this rose. So, I've talked about how crazy I love those those apricot drift roses. Well, I want you to look at the pink color of this rose. I literally just put this in the ground about a month and a half ago. It was a bare root. They had cut it, pruned it way back for obvious reasons, for shipment. I planted it there. And it didn't have any buds on it. They were just little stumpy stalks where they had pruned it back. And I was so hopeful that it would be the right shade of pink. Because, you can buy plants, and in your garden, the color might be slightly different than in my garden. I don't know if that has to do with certain minerals and certain nutrients in the soil, or maybe it's pH, or what. But anyway, it is exactly what I was hoping for. It's just healthy, it's growing, it's looking beautiful. And the Queen of Sweden is, this is a spent one. This was the very first one it put out. But the Queen of Sweden is, from what I read about it, I'm trying to break that off. It doesn't grow really wide. I think it gets about 4 feet tall. I'll put the stats on here for you. But it grows more upright than it does wide. And I like that in a rose, because if you want to plant things like I've got this phenomenal lavender here, if you want to have that kind of growing up, you don't want it to be completely shaded out by another plant. So I wanted one that kind of grew more upright and less wide, so that I could plant other things around it. And I don't know. I am so thrilled with this rose. David Austin sends out really healthy stuff. So I've got another one on this side over here. This is a flamethrower redbud that my husband got me for my birthday. And I haven't planted it yet. It just arrived in the mail. So I wanted it to be able to just kind of recoup from all the stress of being shipped before I plant it. I'm also trying to find a week that it looks like the temps are going to be kind of low, so the heat just doesn't zap it. But this is the other Queen of Sweden rose. It doesn't get as much sun. It gets a lot of sun, but not as much. And you can see it's a little bit behind. It doesn't have any blooms yet, but it's got buds, so it'll be glorious too. But just to give you kind of a side by side, I don't have many to choose from, but if you take this little bloom of the apricot drift rose, you can kind of see how it's got that kind of a warm pink, and we'll see if it kind of looks nice against the Keep in mind, this is an old bloom. So if you wanted that same color theme and you wanted a short rose to grow up maybe not under, but as maybe a second story planting beneath it, you could plant the apricot drift rose and you could carry that color on a lower level, maybe closer to the edge of the border. But anyway, so that's basically it. This is the bubblegum. I have 3 plants, and this is a really large urn, and I have three little plants that I planted, and the bubblegum has completely consumed it. It's already starting to trail. So bubblegum is a beast in a good way. A beast in a good way. So anyway, I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me, and kind of seeing some small changes since the first of the month. Really nothing major, but I just love to come out here and look at things and just see the progress.